Okay guys, huge news. Chess.com released their findings from the investigation into Hans Niemann, and the results are shocking. In an incredibly detailed 72-page document, Chess.com presented evidence that Hans likely cheated online over 100 times, much more than his public statements suggest. I'm going to go through the most important parts of Chess.com's statement right now. So first, Chess.com clarified that they believed Hans had likely cheated online many times, and that they would cooperate with FIDE in their ongoing investigation. They also explained that they had to remove Hans from the Chess.com Global Championship because they needed more time to investigate their concerns. However, they are open to continuing a dialogue with him to discuss his future on Chess.com. This lengthy report includes a convenient timeline of events, and we start on September 4th, the day the cheating allegations took the chess world by storm. On September 4th, 2022, Hans Niemann defeated Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces at the Sinquefield Cup, ending Magnus's 53-game unbeaten streak. The next day, Magnus withdrew from the event, posting a cryptic tweet indicating that if he speaks out on his actions, he'll be in big trouble. That same day, Chess.com discreetly closed Hans' account and withdrew his invitation to the Chess.com Global Championship. One day after that, Hans publicly addressed his ban on Chess.com in this interview.
Now, 4 years later, when I was 16 years old during my streaming career, in an absolutely ridiculous mistake, in unrated games. After that, when I was 12, I have never, ever in my life cheated in an over-the-board game, in an online tournament. They were in unrated games. And I'm admitting this, and I'm saying my truth because I do not want any misrepresentation. I am proud of myself that I learned from that mistake and now have given everything to chess. I have sacrificed everything for chess, and I do everything I can to improve. So I'm going to get started. Basically, I wanted to gain some rating. I just wanted to get higher rated so I could play stronger players. So I cheated in random games on chess.com. Now, I was confronted, I confessed, and this is the single biggest mistake of my life, and I'm completely ashamed. And I'm telling the world because I do not want any misrepresentation, and I do not want rumors. I have never cheated in an over-the-board game. When I was 12 years old, I have never, ever, ever, and I would never do that. That is the worst thing I could ever do, cheat in a tournament with prize money. Now, I made that mistake, and it's not something I was doing consistently. Never when I was streaming did I cheat. Never did I misrepresent my strength.
As you guys can see from this clip, Hans claimed that he cheated only a few years ago when he was 12 years old and 16 years old, but he maintains his innocence in specific circumstances. 1. He states that he's never cheated in a tournament with prize money. And 2. He states that he's never cheated while he was streaming. If you watch the rest of this video, however, this statement seems more and more like a lie. 2 days after Hans' interview, Chess.com sends him a letter personally laying out the reasons for his revoked status on the site and his removal from the CGC. They also released the following tweet. This tweet basically confirms that Chess.com believes Hans has not been truthful regarding his allegations of online cheating, and that they invite him to explain himself or provide a response. Now, fast forward 3 weeks, and we get to another major development in this cheating scandal. On September 27th, Magnus Carlsen released a public statement explaining his unprecedented professional decision to withdraw from the Sinquefield Cup. He indicated that he believed Hans had cheated more and more recently than he had publicly admitted. This statement came a few days after Magnus resigned against Hans after playing one move in the Julius Baer Generation Cup. Now, we move on to the investigation. Before I show you guys the data, let me remind you guys of Hans' statements from his interview at the Sinquefield Cup. He claimed that he had never cheated in a tournament with prize money, and that he never cheated while streaming. And of course, he maintains that the only times when he had cheated were when he was 12 and 16 years old. This table, which highlights all of the instances in which Chess.com believes Hans likely cheated, suggests that Hans has lied repeatedly. First, Chess.com alleges that Hans had likely cheated in 112 games, and that he was already 17 during some of these matches, contradicting Hans' statement of only cheating at the age of 12 and 16. The most surprising piece of information for me, however, is the fact that Hans was streaming in 25 of the games he likely cheated in. That's insane. It's unfathomable to me why someone would even consider cheating while their viewers can see their face in full view and track their eye movements. In the table, we see games from Title Tuesday, which include prize money. Thus, Hans likely did cheat in tournaments with prize money, once again contradicting his prior statements. The table also shows that he likely received assistance in private matches against players like Krikor, Benjamin Bach, and even Jan Nepomniachtchi. Moving on, the Chess.com report also disclosed that in 2020, Hans confessed to cheating offenses during a private call with Danny Rensch, the chief chess officer at chess.com. In an act of good faith, Danny agreed to let Hans close his account and start fresh without revealing the cheating offenses to the public. Hans continued the conversation with Danny on Slack all the way into 2021, where he accepted restrictions from competing on chess.com. However, Hans was eventually granted a chance to return to the tournaments on the site, all while being monitored closely during these events. One of the most important parts of this report is the method of cheating detection that chess.com used. In this section, chess.com stated that to effectively identify the vast majority of cheating, they compute an aggregate strength score. Strength score is a measurement of the similarity between moves made by the player and the moves suggested as the strongest moves by the engine. It is based on actual statistical models and is meant to be used across multiple games. Just for reference, a score of 90 is the highest score they have ever seen a top player sustain over time in classical chess. Chess.com released data regarding numerous grandmasters who had confessed to cheating and compared Hans' strength score to these players. Here is the table as shown in the report. As you can see, Hans' strength score is both lower and higher than a number of confessed cheaters. However, chess.com claims to have successfully identified multiple players who have cheated despite having a relatively low strength score. And now, we arrive at one of the most important parts of this entire video, Hans' over-the-board rise. Outside of his online play, Carlsen-Niemann is the fastest rising top player in classical over-the-board chess in modern history. In the report, chess.com states that while they do not doubt Hans is a talented player, his results are statistically extraordinary. Here, we see that Hans had the fastest and biggest increase in his score over time in comparison to his peers and other notable players, including Alireza Firouzja, Bobby Fischer, and Magnus Carlsen himself. The following figures show that Hans had the fastest and largest increase in FIDE classical rating amongst his peers, when considering all of their classical over-the-board games played after crossing 2500. One really important thing to note, however, is that there are findings that Hans does not have an unusually high number of perfect games. Chess.com states that after carefully analyzing many presentations and videos found online that claim to have found evidence of Hans cheating, they have concluded that the methodology and underlying tools used in these analyses do not meet their standard. In fact, based on chess.com's analysis, Hans actually has one of the lower percentages of near-perfect games when compared to similar players. Now, chess.com has clearly stated that it is not their responsibility to monitor over-the-board events among top players. And it makes sense, right? Chess.com is, after all, a website, and their investigation is almost certainly best performed using their own online games. However, after careful review, they did highlight the strongest over-the-board events they believe could merit further investigation. These events include the 2016 Philadelphia International, the 2021 World Open, and the 55th Capablanca Memorial held in 2022, all tournaments in which Hans performed extremely well. So, after looking at this report, we clearly have a ton of examples of games where Hans likely cheated online, but chess.com's last part of the report focuses on the most crucial part of this entire story, the Sinquefield Cup and the game with Magnus Carlsen. Now, the way Hans was accused of cheating in this game was a bit bizarre. At first, Magnus cryptically implied suspicious play when he dropped out of the tournament, and then again when he name-dropped Hans' coach, Maxime Delugy, who was also caught cheating in Title Tuesday several times. But in Magnus' official statement, he clearly affirmed his belief that somehow Hans had managed to cheat against him in their game. So what did Chess.com have to say about this? Well, they said a few things in the report. According to Chess.com, Hans' recollection of his preparation for the game against Magnus was inaccurate. He also suggested strange moves in his post-game analysis, and his analysis and dependence on the engine seemed incredibly suspicious. Chess.com also measured Hans' strength score during the game, and it came out to be 97.17. After the cheating allegations, more security measures were enacted, and Hans' strength score dropped to 86.31 for the rest of the tournament. Other players, however, also had interesting changes in strength. These can be chalked up to a number of factors, which include the fact that Magnus withdrew and the fact that they were playing new opponents. All of this led Chess.com to state that no conclusions could be made from this specific set of data. What is new information, however, is that several days later after returning to Norway, Magnus Carlsen shared his experience in a private conversation. He stated that playing Hans in the Sinquefield Cup was unlike any game he's ever had. He compared Hans to other prodigies around his age and rating, and he described how these players tend to exert themselves and show great effort throughout long, difficult games. But Magnus said that it was different this time. He described Hans' level of exertion as effortless, and felt like he never had a chance to get back in the game. This is extremely unusual for Magnus, who is known for his tenacity and resourcefulness in tough positions. So basically, all of this strongly suggests that Hans had some sort of assistance in his game against Magnus Carlsen, but there is still no concrete proof. Chess.com once again reiterated their message from September 8th, stating that they would like to have a conversation with Hans to discuss a resolution where he can again participate on Chess.com. They capped off the report by stating that they want the best for Hans, the best for Magnus, and the best for chess. Now, this report puts Hans in a weird spot. There are obviously strong arguments that he cheated in an absurd amount of games online, but because there is no direct proof that he has cheated over the board, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen to him. He's supposed to play in the US Championship starting this week, but his future in the chess world could definitely change soon. Perhaps more top GMs will refuse to play him now, limiting his chances to compete amongst the elite. Or perhaps he will receive some sort of penalty if FIDE finds more information in their own investigation. Regardless of what happens, I do hope that Hans eventually releases his own statement, because he is one person who we haven't heard much from over the past few weeks. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one.